She shared the same passion for God, having attended Columbia Bible College, where she began by majoring in missions, but finishing with a general degree in Bible. They were married in 1983 and immediately began to pray about how and where God might want to use them. They learned of the mission strategy known as tent making, using one's training and experience in order to gain access to and minister in a closed country. Ecstatic about the possibilities after attending a regional missions conference, they applied to a missions organization that was then called International Missions Incorporated, now CRISTAR. CRISTAR specifically seeks to make disciples and plant churches among unreached people groups. The Midwoods were unable to go abroad immediately, however, because Steve was then working on his doctorate in geology. He also had to complete about 1 year or 30 credit hours of missions courses as a requirement for service with CRISTAR. Knowing it was going to take time before they actually left their destination, they took their time going through the detailed missions preparation, which included many theological courses, an intense 5.5-week program in Brooklyn, New York, and a program for learning about language acquisition. Thus, they were equipped to cultivate the gospel in a foreign country. After being evaluated on their ability to interact with others and to work under difficult circumstances, they were officially accepted as members of CRISTAR in the summer of 1985. All their schooling and missions preparation took them from the summer of 1985 to the summer of 1989. They saw God provide for their cross-cultural service through the generous donations of many family, friends, and different churches. Not knowing what they would face required immense courage and implicit trust in God. Finally, on May 25, 1990, they moved to the country of Turkey along with their 4 little boys. Steve and Dana were willing to go anywhere in their service, but they felt that God had led them to Turkey. Once there, they joined a team already working in the capital city of Ankara. CRISTAR put a strong emphasis on learning the language and integrating into the culture. The best way to integrate into the culture was through an occupation. Upon arrival, they first went through an intense 2.5-year program for learning about language. Upon arrival, within a few months of arrival, Steve found an opening in the liaison office of an American company. He worked for this company for 5 years, but the company unfortunately had to shut down, necessitating his search for another job. Almost immediately, he found another job at Middle East Technical University, but sadly the pay system did not work out, and he had to find another job after just 2 semesters there. Each of these jobs, however, opened opportunities in other areas. Steve and a missionary coworker opened a business of their own. This Turkish company would become their platform for ministry for the next 17 years. As foreigners in Turkey, starting this company gave them a legal way to stay in the country. Steve did geological consulting work along with numerous amounts of scientific and technical translation work. He also edited scientific articles pro bono for international journals. His goal was to bless the people around him through his work. Using his theological training, Steve taught Bible and theology classes in the capital city of Ankara and elsewhere in the country. He also taught abroad in Krasnodar, Russia, Baku, and Azerbaijan. Living in Turkey for the total of 23 years, the Midwoods never lost their faith in God, even through challenging situations. They lived in their same apartment for their entire time in Turkey. This, in itself, was almost miraculous. Christians were sometimes targeted in Turkey, and they were questioned by the Turkish police on several occasions. Steve and Dana became a part of the culture there, so much so that Steve became a couple of years and was able to supervise for and arrange the much-needed renovations to their building. Because of careful, intentional training in the areas of theology, language acquisition, and his geological profession, the Nitways were able to enjoy many avenues of ministry. According to the traveling team, an organization that encourages college students to consider foreign mission work, there were about 430,000 missionaries in all branches of Christianity in 2012. Only 2 to 3% of these missionaries, however, worked among unreached people groups. The reason for this low percentage is that many countries do not allow missionaries to enter because they fear the growth and the negative influence of Christianity on their citizens. There are about 26 countries that intentionally do not allow Christian missionaries to cross their borders. These governments are afraid that missionaries will come into their communities and cause commotion or possible revolts. Due to these restrictions, missionaries now know they'll need an occupation to enter into these communities and minister to them. Of the total number of Christian North American missionaries serving overseas, about one-fourth are involved exclusively in evangelical activities such as preaching, translation, church planting, and teaching. The other 3/4 of these missionaries are involved in administration and support work, which includes agriculture, aviation, community development, medicine, and relief efforts, in addition to their missionary activities. People desiring to go overseas as missionaries should pursue proper preparation, which includes an occupational degree along with theological and cultural training. Potential missionaries need to acquire an occupation for the purpose of maintaining residency in certain countries. Not only that, but theological training will help missionaries to more effectively spread the gospel. They must also fully educate themselves on the country's culture, which includes the necessity of learning the language. There are several varieties of training necessary for people in the mission field. In this thesis, I will first discuss the necessity of an occupational degree and why it is an important aspect of entering the mission field. Next, I will discuss the need for some type of theological training to prepare missionaries for the inevitable spiritual battles that they will face on the mission field. I will provide support for cultural training and the definite importance of it in intercultural situations. I will also refute objections there may be to my thesis. Lastly, I will encourage the pursuit of this training because it applies to all Christians and helps us live out our faith more effectively. Before I continue, there are a few terms that need to be defined. A missionary is a person or group of people sent by a church or organization for the purpose of carrying on evangelical activities or others such as educational or hospital work. An occupational degree is a professional certification that provides a person with usual or principal work, especially by means of earning a living. Theological training is the study of religious faith, practice, and beliefs, especially the study of God and his relation to the world. Cultural training is education on the subject of or pertaining to culture or cultivation and the behaviors, beliefs, characteristics, and language of a certain social, ethnic, or age group. Obtaining an occupational degree is a respectable and necessary way to enter certain mission fields. One of the major hindrances in missionary work is the limited access we have to various countries. There are several large countries that do not allow missionaries to enter across their borders if they have an occupation related to religion or any type of ministry. Because of these types of restrictions and the steady increase of legislation limiting Christian activities, missionaries are being denied the necessary visas to enter these countries. If a missionary has an occupation or degree having to do with ministry or religion, the country may not allow access because it fears the perceived influence of Christianity in their communities. Conversely, if the potential to contribute to the country's economy. Contributing to the country's economy in this way not only gives missionaries access to these countries, but also makes them a part of the community. As an active part of the community, missionaries can gain respect by showing that they operate an honest practice and can be trusted. For example, Jared Brown, the co-founder and executive director of an organization called Mission Lazarus, graduated from Abilene Christian University with degrees in international business and Spanish. He worked as a consultant in Houston, Texas in 2001 until he moved to Honduras for a 10-month commitment to assist in the ministerial growth in the region of Choluteca. During those 10 months, God opened Jared's eyes to the amazing number of opportunities for sharing Christ's love that business provided. In 2002, Jared met Allison when she came as a medical provider with the medical brigade to Honduras. They were married in 2003. Jared and Allison officially founded Mission Lazarus in 2004. Allison Brown is a certified nurse practitioner with a passion for human development. In 2003, she opened Mission Lazarus' first clinic in a rural mountain village to provide primary care and nutritional service to women and children in southern Honduras. Advocacy and case management for children with special needs also became an integral part of medical services, with cases generated by referrals from national specialists and medical brigades. In 2007, Allison also developed and directed the operations for the Mission Lazarus Refuge, a new project to provide homes for children at risk. The Mission Lazarus Refuge branch officially opened in 2008. Allison's current role includes development of social and health services for both Honduras and Haiti within Mission Lazarus. Mission Lazarus now has ongoing full-time operations in both Honduras and Haiti. The ministry has grown to include 4 areas of focus: spiritual, educational, medical, and agricultural. 27 congregations have also been planted. By working in a way that serves the community, Mission Lazarus has been able to expand its ministry. Missionaries who contribute to the economy frequently interact with the community in ways that allow them to create relationships. By doing so, they gain trust, friendship, and opportunities to share the gospel. In the fall of 2013, a group of businessmen from Oak Mountain Church in Birmingham, Alabama, embarked on a short-term mission trip to South Asia with the missions organization Mission to the World. They did not go to teach children, befriend college students, or pour concrete. Instead, these men went to mentor South Asian entrepreneurs as a part of Mission to the World's Business as a Mission ministry. They recently opened a center for business development to meet a need in the community by helping local entrepreneurs launch and grow new businesses. Oak Mountain Church was looking for executives to serve as mentors in this course at the center. This was a perfect opportunity for American businessmen and women to use their particular business skills and expertise on the mission field. Business initiatives on the mission field help provide jobs in the community, which not only benefit local families, but also help local churches become more self-sustaining as believers are able to better give financially. This presents an opportunity for many businessmen and women to play a distinct and vital role in fulfilling the Great Commission. As missionaries evangelize in the community, they must have some means of support, which can be difficult to acquire. The majority of missionaries rely upon the generous donations of individuals and churches to make up their budget for ministry and living costs. Whether they are working under their denominational mission board or an international missions organization, it is usually up to the missionary to find their own support. Having an occupation can provide supplemental income. In Acts 18, Luke describes the example of this practice in Paul's ministry. During his journey to Corinth, Paul used his income to provide for his needs. Paul himself refers to the benefits of having a profession as a missionary when he exhorts the church members at Thessalonica, saying, "We were not lazy when we were with you. We did not accept anyone's help without paying for it. Instead, we worked and toiled. We worked day and night as to not be an expense to any of you." While an occupational degree is important to a person planning to enter the mission field, it is not the only training necessary. The Great Commission in Matthew 28 is one of the most well-known passages in the Bible. It states, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you." In order to most effectively minister to others, missionaries must be firmly rooted in the teachings of the Bible. Evangelizing is a crucial part of mission work, and training in theology and biblical studies is important to ensure that the teaching of the gospel is sound. Spreading of the gospel. The Bible clearly warns believers several times against false teachers. In 1 Timothy 6, 3-4, Paul speaks to Timothy about the danger of false doctrine. "If anyone teaches false doctrine and does not agree to the sound instruction of our Lord Jesus Christ and to godly teaching, he is conceited and understands nothing." Missionaries must be cautious of false teachings and not become ensnared in them. One important purpose of theological training is to help missionaries become well established in their own faith. This solid foundation will help them avoid falling into the trap of wanting only achievement for themselves instead of glory for God and the advancement of His kingdom. Deepening of personal faith is a major goal in receiving biblical training. It is a key part of evangelism because we cannot share the gospel if we are not firmly rooted in our personal faith. 1 Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." Being prepared theologically enables missionaries to discern truth and share their faith confidently in uncomfortable situations. In order to protect themselves from these false teachings, missionaries should be certain of their own faith. We cannot make disciples if we are not disciples ourselves. Going to a foreign country and ministering there requires careful instruction in the gospel, along with a willingness to engage people from different cultures in sometimes uncomfortable situations. We can make these conversations easier if missionaries have had cultural training to know how to specifically and effectively communicate. Connecting with the local people is an essential part of communicating with them and gaining their trust. Many groups have never heard the gospel story and are not familiar with it, but residents of some countries have heard the gospel. Missionologist Ed Stelter tells us, "To go to all peoples of the Great Commission, we need to plant the unchanging gospel into new soil and let it take root there." When bringing the gospel to others, it is important to be considerate of their culture. A lack of indigenous insight can reveal a lack of cultural insight and become offensive to others. Paul gives us an example of being able and willing to adapt to the needs of all different cultures in his letter to the Corinthians. "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them." Paul's humility is evident in his willingness to identify with others in whatever circumstances they were in, even at his own inconvenience. Along with cultural training, language training is necessary. Taking a language course in an immersion environment is the best way to learn a language. Reading books in the native tongue, when available, will also help missionaries become more accustomed to the culture and the language. As missionaries are further immersed in the language while in their host country, it will become become easier for them to speak the language fluently and communicate more easily with the people they're trying to reach. When considering this preparation, it is important to remember that God is sovereign, and His sovereign will determines our lives and also guides mission work. This is obvious throughout the book of Proverbs, but specifically in Proverbs 16:9, which states, "In their hearts, humans plan their courses, but the Lord establishes their steps." In light of this passage, one objection to encouraging specific preparation for mission work is that training of this type demonstrates a lack of trust in God's provision. When people believe that God is calling them to the mission field, should they not just follow the call immediately instead of pursuing this extensive training? Trusting in God's provision is always a necessity, but it is also true that missionaries must prepare to share the gospel in the most effective ways. Again, in 1 Peter 3:15, Paul encourages us to always be prepared. Specific training provides preparation in the best way possible to go out into the field and spread the gospel by evangelizing through daily interactions, Bible studies, and service. An occupational degree provides access to restricted countries and communities, as well as an income and a variety of opportunities for interaction. Theological training is beneficial to missionaries in the field, increasing their understanding of the Bible and equipping them to teach others with confidence. A basic understanding of the culture and an extensive understanding of the language enriches missional living. Occupational training is essential for people preparing to enter the mission field in closed countries and beneficial for any missionary. This preparation is not only for prospective missionaries, but also for any Christian. You do not have to be a missionary overseas to be influential in spreading the gospel. Having an occupation gives us frequent opportunities in the workplace to talk with our coworkers and be witnesses for Christ. Some type of theological training is beneficial in this environment as well. America is receiving more immigrants daily. We are arguably the most influential country and are surrounded by more diverse cultures than ever before. With such a diverse audience, we are given the perfect opportunity to leave a lasting impression. Learning about the customs and interactions of other countries will help make foreigners feel more comfortable. Cultural and language training will aid in the process of spreading the gospel, whether on foreign soil or here in America. So, ask yourselves, am I living my life as Christ commands me? Christ commands us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Our ultimate goal as Christians is to bring glory to God by sharing Christ with all nations. And we can do that by being prepared to give the reason for the hope that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey, so much. Just really spoke to me, and got a couple questions for you. But first, we've asked a couple other students as well. Tell us why you chose this paper. You have a lot of wonderful stories in there, even for our own teachers here. But what made you say, I gotta really pour my heart into this for a whole year and choose this thesis?
Well, I am interested in possibly going into missions. In the future, I'm not quite sure on that yet, but I would like to be a part of that. I also have experienced short mission trips. I went on one last summer with Mission Lazarus, the organization that I talked about in my paper. And I really enjoyed it, and I just was like, this is what I want to do. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. I want to do three things. I want to first affirm a lot of things that you said, and then ask you two questions. First, on the affirmation side, for me, I'm a pastor, but I'm also a missionary kid, And so my dad and grandpa were missionaries to Japan, a very underreached country, less than 1% of Christians. So when you were talking about the urgency, right, of getting the gospel really hit home. And then also I really appreciate your thesis, how you talked about preparation and having the occupational, the theological, the cultural preparation that's needed, because really, yeah, you're singing to the choir this morning. So I really appreciate that. And also just want to affirm you, I don't think there's enough challenge today for young people to go into ministry, full-time ministry, missionaries, pastors. And so I really appreciate your challenge to us. Speaking from the heart, but giving a lot of wonderful statistics and so forth. So good job, great paper presentation. So 2 questions. First of all, I'm going to talk about global missions and also local missions. So globally, you gave some pretty, to me, kind of sobering statistics. And you talked about the different countries that are close to Christianity today. You have the occupational missionaries going in. Why do you think, and so the stats, you said 2 to 3% of the 430,000 missionaries are going to unreached people groups. So that's a really small percentage, right, going to unreached folks. And then today, only a quarter of those missionaries are doing evangelistic activities versus other kinds of work. So in your research and so forth, did you come across anything that would say why so few people are going to the unreached, and also why such a small percentage are doing evangelistic work as opposed to other kind of work?
So first, why people are going to unreached people groups?
Or I guess the question is why aren't more people going to unreached people groups?
Well, first of all, it is harder to get into those specific countries, as what my paper is about, if you don't have a legal way to stay in that country. I mean, half of it, I do think, is that a lot of us in America don't know which groups are unreached, and so it is kind of hard to figure that out. What was the second part?
And the second part of that was why are only a quarter of those folks going overseas doing evangelistic work as opposed to education or agricultural development or things like that?
Okay. I do believe that obviously occupational degrees are more successful in the mission field because you have a reason to stay there, and going overseas as a full-time missionary is hard because you don't know what to expect. I mean, you don't know what to expect in any situation, but especially just going as a missionary, not a lot of people are receptive of you coming in and telling them what to do, and just being like, believe me because I'm a missionary, because that doesn't work that way.
Okay, great. And then my last question is more local here, and I appreciate it. Towards the end, you said you don't have to be a missionary to spread the gospel, right? In our occupations, and you can always be prepared to be called for what happens. So, the question is, are we here in North America missionaries? And if so, what would that look like? And then, if you could also address the issue of preparation, what would it look like for us to be prepared if we're missionaries here locally?
Mm-hmm. So being a missionary in North America, you obviously can use your occupation in whatever field you're in. So it gives you those opportunities to share the gospel. Like if you're a teacher, you can share the gospel with your students and their parents. If you're in the business field, you can share it with your coworkers. So that's what it would look like to be a missionary in North America as an American citizen in a normal job workplace. And I'm sorry, what was the second part?
What will the training look like? So you're addressing that occupationally. Maybe talk a little bit about culturally. Is there any special cultural preparation that we would have to do to be missionaries here?
Okay. Yes, I do believe there is, because now actually a lot of occupations are really looking for bilingual applicants. And so it is kind of already integrated into our system, but people don't necessarily know that yet. And so if you are bilingual, you do have a higher chance of getting hired. And so I think that's part, especially with like New Mexico right next to us, a lot of people are speaking Spanish. And so I think that's how we can be prepared culturally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelsey.
Hi.
Good job.
Thank you.
As a former missionary, I've enjoyed your paper and reading about the preparation that you recommend missionaries have before going to the field. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, how do you define a short-term missionary versus a long-term missionary? I felt like what you wrote here was more aimed at those considering going into missions as a full-time role in their life. How about, when you say short-term missions, what does that look like as far as a length of time and the preparation, perhaps, that a short-term missionary should have?
Great. I would define short-term missionary as a missionary or volunteer that goes not necessarily overseas, but I am specifically talking about overseas. So if we're talking about short-term overseas, I would define short-term as no longer than a month or two. And I do believe they need some sort of preparation, definitely, but not to the extent of what long-term missionaries do.
Okay, and do you believe that your education here at Providence has given you at least some type of foundation for the mission trip? You mentioned a short-term mission trip that you've already been a part of. Do you feel like the exposure that you've had here at Providence to other cultures, the studies or the books that you've been exposed to, and then also just the building of your faith that happens daily here in this institution, do you feel like that has given you a foundation for the mission trip that you've already been a part of, and then any future mission trip you might take?
So, towards the cultural aspect of it,
Yes.
here I'm taking French right now, so it didn't necessarily help because I actually went to Honduras. They speak Spanish there, not French. So it didn't necessarily help me specifically, but I know people here do take Spanish. And that I can see that being helpful in the mission trip, definitely. And then the spiritual aspect of it, I do believe it did give me a more solid foundation because, well, I was over there for 10 days, so I wasn't necessarily able to influence people long term that I'm not aware of. And so it did help me preaching, evangelizing, but I'm not really sure how it has affected them now.
Thank you so much. I did want to clarify, I said former missionary. I should say I was a former overseas missionary. As you stated, we're all missionaries here. I think that first and foremost, we're missionaries to our families and then our neighbors and beyond. So one more thing, you mentioned CRISTAR specifically and their rigorous preparation program. I just wanted to know, did you encounter information about how the program is financed? For instance, individuals like Dr. Midwitty and his wife coming into the program, while they were in the training part of it, was that Were they receiving a stipend? Did they raise support during the training part as well as the actual mission trip or the time of overseas?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not aware of really the specifics on when they acquired their support, but feel free to ask.
I'll get with them later and pass this on. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelsey, great job.
Hi.
This paper was really thought-provoking for you, so it took me a while to try to get the questions that I was going to ask into something that was even intelligible, so bear with me here. I was wondering, you brought up and mentioned that you yourself were considering missions as an option, and as someone who's considering that and also about to be graduating high school and moving on, I was wondering how you think the best preparation, the steps that should be taken in preparation, what order, how they would go about. For example, specifically I'm thinking, would you prayerfully search for unreached people groups and then try to focus on getting occupational training that would allow you to have access to them? Or would you think it more along the lines of, I'm just going to get some kind of occupational degree that I find interesting and then use that and go find some group out there that I can actually get access to with that degree?
Yes. I'm not quite sure what I want to major in yet, so I have been thinking about that, and I've definitely kept the mission field in mind while I'm thinking about that. So, whatever occupation I do choose, I think I will lean towards how helpful is it going to be in the mission field.
Okay, thanks. My next question, a little complex, so again, bear with me here. So I read a few studies recently about short-term missions and the possibility that some of the things done on them can set back things locally. For example, if you bring people on to build a house, build a church, things like that, it might take away jobs from people who work there, who work construction and things like that. So I was wondering, that doesn't seem like something that would be quite as much of a problem with your theory of occupational missions for long term, because these people are getting access to these countries because they have a skill set and an occupational degree that's they're lacking there, and it's in demand enough that they're bringing people in from overseas. And so my question is, if someone were to do this and have this occupational degree and use it as their platform for missions work, do you feel that they have any responsibility while in the missions field to use that degree to train the local population in that occupation to try to build up the local economy, local workers, and raise the educational level on that regard? Or do you think it's more along the lines of you're going there, you're doing this work, and you're using it just to proselytize?
I believe that the second one, the first one we mentioned, is more beneficial, that they go into the country and also teach the locals how to operate their business so they can get their local economy going if for some reason the missionary does have to leave the country. Like in my paper when I talked about the church that sent the business mentors over, they started the business center with the local people. Yeah, with the local people. So now that they aren't there, because that mission trip was short term, now that business can still operate because the locals can operate it by themselves.
Thank you.
Great paper, Kelsey. I really enjoyed reading it. I liked how you covered all the bases, going through different kinds of preparation that missionaries need. I'll ask you a question about the occupational part of it. You say that missionaries, the proper preparation for missionary includes an occupational degree. And then you gave Dr. McWitty as an example of someone for whom an occupational degree was a central, or an occupation other than just ministry, was a central portion of what they did overseas. And I'm wondering how strongly, is that part of your thesis, like that's how missionaries should act, or should conduct a ministry? Like, should all missionaries do that because it's more effective, or is that just what some missionaries should do?
I'm specifically talking about missionaries in closed countries. So if you are definitely going to a closed country, you you need an occupation, but not necessarily all missionaries where you can go anywhere.
Okay, so then it is more just of a practical measure. Okay? So then I guess just last question then is, does Paul in his tent-making ministry model that specific approach? Or is Paul really different? Because the quotation you read from Acts depicts Paul doing some tent-making, which in terms of the amount of preparation you need, isn't really on par with a doctrine of geology in terms of how much you have to put into it. And then he only seems to have done it when he had to do it. Like as soon as Paul and Silas, as soon as his buddies showed up, he quit doing it and devoted himself exclusively to ministry. So what would Paul say about this? Would he say, okay, we're going to do that as a practical measure, but if we sort of like, you know how he tells people not to get married because it can distract? What I'm kind of arguing here is that Paul would say, yeah, you should get a doctorate in geology if you need to, but you should focus on ministry if you can't.
Right, and I talked about more in my written pieces that if you do believe that you get over into the country and then you do believe that God's calling you to quit your job and just do full-time ministry, I do believe that that's appropriate.
Great, thanks a lot.
We have time for just one very quick question.
Hi, Kelsey, thank you. Excellent thesis. My question is about the stories that we tell about missionaries. First of all, I lived overseas with missionaries in West Africa for 2 years and saw so much that supports what you're saying. I 100% agree with you. I grew up on stories of missionaries like Gladys Aylward and Mary Slessor, and these were a big factor in developing a passion for sharing the gospel interculturally at a young age. But these missionaries often were either denied training or they went off when no mission organization would accept them. Gladys Aylward just took the train as far as it could go and ended up in the middle of China and disappeared for 20 years. These are powerful, dramatic stories, right? How do we tell stories about the kind of training that really is a good idea, that you're arguing is necessary for overseas missionaries, and make that as powerful as these stories of, wow, God provided in ways that just couldn't compete with human preparation? How do we tell stories about, well, I went to college and I went to grad school and then I got language training and the orientation, and every 2 years I go for continuing education. Those are powerful. I want to argue that. How do we tell stories about it?
Right, and I do agree with you that the stories wouldn't be as powerful because you had all this training and so you were prepared. But I mean, God works in mysterious ways. You never know what's going to happen once you get over there. So if you do end up leaving your job and you don't, or something happens and you have to quit, I believe that good stories could come out of how God kept you through it and how God strengthened you and just gave you the means to keep living there. So I think that's still pretty powerful.
Thank you, Kelsey.